Bonne soirée à tous et bienvenue à cette rencontre du comité de dérogation pour la ville d'Ottawa. Welcome everyone to this public hearing for the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of planning applications, notably minor variances and consent applications, although there are others. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I will be chairing this meeting this evening. With me as well, pardon me, is Member Willis, Member Hindle, Member Markovich, and joining us shortly, I'm sure, is Member White. We did see him earlier, so we know he's around. Also with us this evening, of course, is our very capable committee staff that ensure that all of this goes off without a hitch. So with us this evening, we have Mr. Belmar, the Secretary Treasurer of the committee. We also have two coordinators helping us out tonight. We have Ms. Mandy Nguyen and Ms. Emily Byers. And I believe that's it for coordinators. Did I miss anybody? Okay, I don't think so for this evening. So please take note that this hearing will be video conferenced on and live streamed on YouTube. So if you would like to see either the video or the agendas in the future for whatever reference purposes you may have, you can do that just by going to the Committee of Adjustment website. And if you have any issues, do not hesitate to reach out to committee staff. They can help you with anything you may be looking for. So before I begin, we have a number, so the committee's jurisdiction is actually fairly narrow. There are a number of things that we can't deal with as part of the hearing process. Most notably, anything that's not actually part of the application. So if you have an issue with either, height of a proposal or something like that, where there's actually no relief required from the zoning bylaw, well, then it isn't something that we can address. We really have to deal with what's before us, what we're making a decision on, which is strictly what's part of that application. We also don't make any, make essentially no comments or any discussion on noise or pollution or property maintenance or property values, that kind of thing. Also, prosecution for illegal construction. We treat all applications as if they're new to us, and we make a decision based on the merit of the application. We will not entertain any derogatory comments about anybody involved in these proceedings. So please remember to stay respectful at all times. And finally, if we find that during the course of discussion on a minor variance application that greater relief is required or a new minor variance is required, then in those cases, we need to step those applications down and allow for a proper circulation of a complete application that reflects exactly what it is that the proponent is looking for. So as part of the statutory declaration notification requirements, each applicant is required to post a sign on the property. And then typically you can do two things. Either you can file a statutory declaration in hard copy, or what we've turned to doing during the virtual hearings is to simply do an oral affirmation or swearing on that declaration. So I believe we have a number of them to do this evening. So, and also I just want to remind everyone that you really do need to be able to certify that the sign was, in fact, erected for the entirety of the time that that sign needs to be under the regulations. So we will be looking for that confirmation from you. With that, though, if we can't, for whatever reason, get that statutory declaration, then we can't hear that item. So just so you know, we do need to get that done right at the beginning of the hearing on an application. So you saw the note, essentially the notice that we had at the beginning of the hearing about quorum. I don't need to repeat that. And then, so in terms of the hearing process, you saw there was an agenda at the start of the hearing again. That's just an agenda that notes the order in which the applications were received, not necessarily the order that we have to hear them in. So some cases where we ask for presentations on applications, we tend to put them a little bit later and deal with the very straightforward applications first. And I think we're going to be doing that this evening with at least one application. So we'll have one presentation. In other cases, we're not asking for presentations. We'll simply ask I'll ask the panel members to ask any clarifying questions that they may have. Sometimes we don't. We read material in depth before we get here. So sometimes we have a very good understanding of the application. If there's something we're not sure about, then that's our opportunity to ask some questions. Once all of that is done, then I'll open it up to the public portion of the hearing on an application, and I will go to a speakers list. So if there's no one on the speakers list, then I'm going to open it up to everyone. If there's somebody on the speakers list, I do those first, and then I open it up to anybody else who would like to speak to the committee. After we've done all of that, the committee gets a chance to deliberate on all of the information that we have, and we can then make a decision. So clearly we can grant an application, we can deny an application. We can also defer an application, which doesn't happen very often, but it typically happens only if we have a lot of new information that's brought forward. And of course, we can adjourn an application, as I mentioned, if we see that there's either a good reason to, or there's a need in terms of allowing for additional discussion, or if there's actually a new minor variance application that's required. So with regards to the decision then, a formal written decision is issued within 10 days of the hearing. And note, with the adoption of Provincial Bill 23, that's now in full force and effect, the decisions of the Committee of Adjustment continue to be appealable within 20 days of the written decision, but only by the applicant, the minister, or a specified person or public body that has an interest in the matter. And a specified person does not include an individual or a community association. So that concludes essentially my opening remarks. We do have a number of items of business. Excuse me. So we have 4 sets of minutes that we need to adopt. So I'm going to start with the ones for March 1st. So I need somebody to move on the adoption of those minutes. So thank you, Mr. Hindle, seconded by Ms. Markovich. So all those in favor? All right, thank you. So the March 1 minutes are adopted. I'm dissenting on that, not dissenting, but I'm abstaining on it because I don't believe I was there for the March 1st meeting. March 15th minutes. Do I have a mover? Ms. Willis, thank you. Seconded by Mr. Hindle. All those in favor? All right, so the minutes of March 15th are now adopted. April 5th. Do I have a mover? Mr. Hindle? Ms. Willis, thank you. And all those in favor? All right, so thank you for that. The minutes of April 5th are adopted. And then for April 19th, I need a mover. Mr. Hindle, thank you. Ms. Markovich, I'm putting you down as seconder.
Sorry, no, I was, pardon me, Madam Chair, I was not in attendance on the 19th, so I can't.
Oh, and neither was I. All right, so Ms. Willis. Okay, so all those in favor? All right, so for the record then, it would be Ms. Markovich and myself abstaining on that because neither one of us were in attendance for that. No, I think I was actually. My mistake. I think it was the next week. So I'm in favor, so no issues with that. Okay, so we have the minutes finally adopted. So the next thing that we have that we can deal with is declarations of conflict of interest. Is there anyone that has either that needs to declare conflict of interest with any of the items on our panel or any of the other 2 panels today? All right, so for the record, there are no declarations of conflict of interest. And then, so before we go to the adjournment requests, which would be the next thing that we're going to do, I just would like to recognize that this is in fact the last meeting of this particular panel and all our panels today in Committee of Adjustment. It's the end of our mandate. So with that, I would like to thank my fellow panel members for their dedication, their expertise. It has been a pleasure to deal with you, Member Willis, Member Hindle, Member Markovich, and Member White. I know it looks like I may be the only one who's continuing on. I hope that you will all consider joining the committee at a future date because your input and your contribution has been tremendous. So thank you. And we'll move on with our agenda. Hopefully it won't be too painful for the last one for everyone. So with that, then we have 2 items for adjournment. We have application number 6 first that I'd like to deal with. And that one is for 131 Winding Way, looking for Mr. LaBelle. Mr. Lavelle.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening. So, Mr. Lavelle, you're aware that there's a request for an adjournment on this application.
Yes, I am.
Did you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I believe there's two requests for adjournment. One from Justin, the city planner, on the basis of, I guess, a new item that was brought to our attention that was missed during the permit review process at zoning level, which deals with a driveway variance that will be required, and we respect that and have been notified of this. And unfortunately, at this time we would prefer not to delay our review of the item that's at hand on today's application, for the very reason that we're here before you today, not to just to recognize the fact that we're looking for your consideration on the variance, but that it's not going to be a final review process. It still does require an executive level review from the RVCA following the staff review, because it is another variance at the planning level of the RVCA as well that we're seeking. So we need to kind of move forward with this minor variance with regards to the RVCA setback, because it really is of importance and priority for this file. And we don't object to applying for a second variance with full fees, just to try and avoid a delay on the first application, on the first item, which is on the agenda this evening.
All right, thank you. So there is, in fact, an adjournment request from the RVC, and I see that Mr. Lenand has joined us. Mr. Lenand, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, May, through the chair. The comments that are provided in the letter that went to the committee speaks about a geotechnical report. I just want to update those comments because we have received that report since the comments were issued to the committee. I've had a chance to review it, and while they do address some concerns, I think the overall concern from the RVCA regarding the setback hasn't changed. So our comments remain the same, that when we're looking at the policies, both from the Conservation Authority's development policies, as well as in relation to the city's variance policies, that our comments would largely remain intact, that the 30 years should be respected on this lot.
All right, so you're in opposition. Just want to make sure that we're confirming that.
The position officially is adjournment to let them have the opportunity to redesign the proposal, which may result in not requiring the variance, but should they go forward, that would be up to them, and we would not be in support of that.
All right, thank you for that. So, Mr. Lavelle, we typically don't deal with minor variance applications on properties in a piecemeal fashion. So in this case, we've been alerted by planning staff that there is a need for an additional minor variance. So rather than to deal with a minor variance and then another one and then another one, we have to deal with the proposal as a sort of a package deal. So my inclination would be to, in fact, adjourn this, to allow that circulation and to have a complete application before us. And it would also provide some time for you to continue discussions with the RVC about possibly even doing a redesign that would allow for the elimination of the minor variance on that setback for the 30-minute setback. So, but I want to hear from the other panel members before we go to a decision on this. So thoughts, Ms. Willis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just a bit confused about the 30-meter setback as it pertains to a portion of the building that is cantilevered over the ground. If I understand correctly, there's no part of the structure at ground level that's encroaching on that 30 meters, is my understanding of it. I just wanted clarification on that. And if that is the case, would the same apply if it was a roof overhang? Is that also not allowed within the 30-meter setback? At what point do you draw the line? And if it's a ground condition you're concerned about, why would a cantilevered deck be of concern?
Mr.
Lennon, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I wasn't sure who the question was directed to, but with regards to the setback, the 30-meter setback, whether it's cantilevered or not, the establishment of a variance would allow for the reduction of that setback. I know you guys tie it to the plans, but it would essentially create the precedent for a reduced setback on the property, which would allow for different types of structures to be placed in that. And it's typically applied in our policies and how we present our recommendations to the committee that whether it's a deck that's being cantilevered or in this case a structured patio that is then pushing that or encroaching into that setback, which is to be protected, especially on a lot that doesn't necessarily require that setback to be encroached to provide or accommodate the development that's being sought. It's not like it's a constrained lot that can't provide for that setback. And there isn't really a justification for variance from our perspective from that policy.
So just aside from the concern that someone else might come forward and push it a bit, if we put a condition in that said it will always be cantilevered in this case and be very specific about tying it to plans.
That's the sorry to cut you off.
Sorry, that's just what I wanted to know. But in terms of practical application of it, is there a concern aside from what the interpretation by others might be? If there's any condition regarding the ground cover or anything underneath it, that is there any reason why you would be concerned about it?
Depending on the scenario, there may be concerns related to projects that are looking for cantilevered. In this case, the slope stability was a concern addressed, but they have provided geotechnical to address that. In other scenarios, an EIS may be required. So when we're looking at cantilever into that setback, and the reason why we have that setback, by setting that precedent opens that opportunity where there may be concerns or there are issues that would come into effect. And particularly like when we review it, whether it's cantilevered or built into the ground, the impacts are still there when they're intruding into that zone for protection. So we would still apply, even though that it's raised off the ground and the structure itself isn't physically attached to the ground. It is introducing more use into that space. So
in this instance, though, the geotechnical study that's come in indicates that it's acceptable from a geotechnical perspective.
They are.
Is that correct?
The geotechnical report through the chair did provide justification for it being a stable slope, that the anchoring of that structure and engineering of that structure would be satisfactorily outside of the geotechnical hazard. Yes.
And in future applications, if somebody came forward and the geotechnical study indicated that it was not geotechnically sound, it could be turned down on that basis.
It could, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Member Willis. Anybody else with any questions? Member Hindle.
Yeah, I guess I have a question, just given that we are considering the adjournment at this stage. Is the intention that for the driveway that was flagged as not being potentially compliant, is the intention that you're going to come forward with a zoning minor variance for that, or that the site plan will be redesigned to not have that variance be in place?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Hindle. I think the idea that what we've discussed with Justin, again, we have a building permit issued for this file, so the building is well under construction. Everything is in place. The garage is framed, and it was missed at zoning review. So I do want to point that out. And while with that mentioned, we are in keeping with the. So the owners live 3 doors down, and we've essentially designed the driveway condition and the garage with doors not facing the street to reflect the existing pattern of the street. So most driveways provide windows on the street as opposed to a garage door on the street, which makes it look good as an extension of the house rather than a garage fronting the street. So it does offer, in our opinion, a better solution for the front streetscape, but all the while, just to reiterate the fact that we are in keeping with the neighboring properties and the way the driveways are designed for access to garage it's sort of like a 40-60 split based on my numbers recently, where that condition exists. So we wouldn't be revising the driveway to comply with the section. We would be asking for relief, and we've discussed this with Justin, the planner, and he expressed no major concerns with it. It's a variance. It's a process that we have to run through, and we totally appreciate that, and we're willing to run through the process. We're hoping to, because it was missed, and we have a building permit, and it was only discovered as a result of this particular application upon review, that ideally it wouldn't delay this application, and we would come forward with a new application. And I totally respect and understand the committee's decision moving forward, regardless of the decision this evening. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions from the panel? Ms. Willis?
Sorry, just that just raised another question in my mind. How did you get a building permit if the cantilever deck does not comply with the zoning bylaw?
So in the original design, we were at the time of the application, we were working with the RVCA on alternate design options for the cantilever deck. So we actually had submitted a building permit application with a landscape plan that kept it basically an unresolved landscape plan at the time. It was showing a pool in the general area, and it showed the intent behind the foundation design. But because we were still working with the RVCA on the actual configuration of that cantilever, we went in with a reduced chamfered. Basically, we sliced off that part of the cantilever so as to proceed with the house, with the intent that we would apply for this variance later. And once we were able to review a compromise solution with the RVCA. So I just want to point out that the original cantilever was almost twice the size and required columns coming down into the RVCA setback. And we, through conversation with the RVCA and trying to mitigate the amount of impact on beyond the RVCA setback, we proposed what is before you today is a stepped cantilever where it was a true cantilever and didn't require any structure to actually impose on the 30 meter setback. And as a result, we had our engineers look at it and confirm that there is no impact on those soil stabilization criteria. So we were comfortable moving forward, and we were fully transparent about it with the RVCA along the way. We were always in contact, mentioning that we were working on an alternative solution to present, but unfortunately, they confirmed to us that at the staff level, the RVCA has to abide by their policy framework, which doesn't allow them to approve at staff level any projections beyond the 30 meter setback, and that a second level review through the executive committee was required. So really, this evening's intent was to try and gain consideration from the planning level from the committee members to essentially recommend approval on this cantilever so that we can proceed with the final stages of review and approval through the RVCA executive committee, which would be a next level review following this evening's committee decision.
Mr. Lalonde, can you confirm that process for us? That's I wasn't aware that this second stage executive, and because I'm trying to understand. So just so I'm going to give you some context, because I do have a question, and it'll come back to Mr. Lavelle at some point. But what I'm really looking for is I need to understand the hardship that would be borne by the applicant if we were to defer this for 4 weeks to allow for the circulation of that minor variance. I'm kind of flipping it the other way. I want to understand just what that hardship is. So, and it sounds like it's tied possibly to this process. So, Mr. Lalonde, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So through the chair, what Mr. Lavelle has spoken to is accurate. They submitted an application that received approval from the Conservation Authority, which essentially resolved all the issues that were outside of the 30 meter setback to allow for the construction of the house. That included the geotechnical report that was reviewed and approved for the house. And that is why an updated report was required for this application, because they had removed the cantilevered portion from that geotechnical report. So they had received the approval for that. To amend the application, or essentially create a new application for the cantilevered portion, that application would fall under Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act. And that process and that development would have to be compliant with RVCA policies under the Conservation Authorities Act, separate to this committee of adjustment. Because of our policies not allowing for this type of structure to be created, it likely would require approval from the executive hearing committee, which is akin to the Committee of Adjustment that has final decision for exceptions where policies can't be met. And that process would have to follow a permit application, then basically staff review and confirmation that staff can't approve the permit. While those applications are under the Conservation Authorities Act separate from the Planning Act, there is no jurisdictional requirement for the variance to be had before they go forward before that executive committee. I guess in the applicant's favor, having a decision from the Committee of Adjustment could either be helpful or create a decision point for the applicant to have an understanding of if that project would be had. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg. Which one do you do first? And
yeah, so isn't that interesting? Because in my mind, it's almost like your committee should actually be making the determination more than we should with regards to whether or not this is a minor variance that's desirable for.
And this is a question
area
that we deal with on a daily perspective for dealing with planning applications and conservation authorities applications that we have to balance in every case. So traditionally, our position is to try and handle the zoning matters ahead of time, recognizing that they are separate processes under separate legislation, so they can operate independently. But to try and add some surety to the process is typically what is recommended, but it's up to the applicant on whether they want to try and proceed concurrently or without a planning decision in place.
So tell me then, Mr. Lalonde, have you ever seen it where there's been a conditional approval of it based on, so could the committee say we will approve the minor variance conditional on it passing the test at your committee?
Through the chair, you're asking a conditional variance?
Yeah, so and we've done this. We've done conditional variances before. So the idea being that we would give it its blessing provided that approval is also given by your committee.
I don't want to interrupt the member of the panel for a question they have hand raised.
No, go ahead. I want to hear your answer first, and then we'll go to Ms.
So
Willis after. So everybody gets a chance.
I defer back to municipal staff and policies and procedures for the applicability of conditions for a variance application. I know how in Ottawa you have used that previously. I will say that the Conservation Authority process is closer to a building permit, and in that regard, it's applicable law for obtaining a building permit. And conditionally, we can't condition or require conditions related to zoning in that permit. Hence why we try to deal with the planning or recommend dealing with the planning first.
Okay, so
there is no clause or mechanism to enforce zoning or the powers that the Committee of Adjustment have through that process.
yeah, no, it would revert back to us. I'm looking to you, Mr. Belmar, if you would. Any thoughts on that? And how that might work if we wanted to try that? Have we done it before?
I've never heard of a conditional approval by the Committee of Adjustment subject to an approval by the
Another
Rio
body.
Valley Conservation Authority. I wouldn't recommend it. I would need to know more details about that. I
Okay.
can't recommend that at this time, Madam Chair.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. I know sometimes these things take a little more work than just guessing whether or not we can do it. All right, Ms. Willis.
Madam Chair, sorry, I didn't mean to stop Mr. Lalonde from his explanation. I just wanted to jump in when he was done. It seems to me that the zoning bylaw is mimicking the requirement of RVCA's interest with regard to the setback. So if we deal with this and let's say we approve it, that says that we're concerned with the geotechnical aspects and the aspect of what RVCA is interested in, but if they are going to be in a position to trump it anyway, then it's really no risk to us aside from going against city staff's recommendation where the zoning bylaw is incorporating the same requirement. So if in the opinion of the executive committee of the RVCA, if we were to approve this, they did not agree with it, they're not going to be able to build it anyway, if I understand correctly what Mr. Lalonde has said. So in the interest of getting things moving and helping him, recognizing they're going to have to come back for another variance for the driveway or amend their site plan, I don't see a problem with dealing with that one aspect today, given that RVCA can trump our decision. That's not a bad word these days. RVCA can not pay attention to our decision. And if they don't give their permit, then the building does not get built in that manner.
Mr. Lalonde, did you want to jump in there? You
Yeah,
look
if I
like
may
you
through
want
the
to.
Chair, just for clarification, because the Committee of Adjustment is dealing with the zoning matter under the Planning Act. So your test under the Planning Act or what you're reviewing against, and likewise, our executive committee would be reviewing the test under the Conservation Authorities Act. So I don't want to say that it's necessarily one trumping the other. It's two separate processes that that the applicant would need to go through and satisfy. So the scope or the level of review that this project needs is enhanced because of that. And I don't want to infer that one decision would equal, force a decision for another committee. Likewise, I wouldn't say the executive committee. So yes, the policies are related and are intended to be aligned, and that's why our comments are as such, is because the Conservation Authority's development policies reference the 30 meters in areas that are regulated. Likewise, the city's zoning bylaw references that same 30 meters are related to water courses. So the slope stability issue has been addressed. So that would have been a secondary issue to the 30-meter setback requirement. So there's two matters that are being reviewed as part of this application. And they're being reviewed under two different policies that have the same setback requirement. Hence why our position is what it is at this time. I know we're still on the adjournment request. But,
I know we are.
So I don't want to get too far down that road.
But sorry, I just want to follow up. It means though that if in the end, if we were to grant or not grant this, I mean, if we don't grant it, I guess it stops. If we do grant it, the building will not go ahead if the Conservation Authority is not satisfied.
So Member Willis, right now, it's not whether we're granting it or not, it's whether we're deferring it.
That's my whole point, Madam Chair, because I don't see, what I'm trying to get at is that there's not risk. If there's concern about technical reasons why this cantilever should not be allowed, then it's going to be, if the technical reasons are by the Conservation Authority, it's not going to proceed anyway.
Yeah, but I think we also heard from the Conservation Authority that they don't need to have our approval to take it to the executive committee for a decision anyway. So we're not holding them up.
Well, we would be
the deferral, no, because they can still take it forward. So if we wanted to deal with the minor variances as a package deal, they can still go through their process and then come back to us. I don't think I heard that that's not a possibility. So, and that's what I'm like. So from my standpoint, it's so what's the hardship? Well, I'm not hearing that there's a hardship for a 4-week deferral on this.
Well, it wouldn't be, my assumption would be that it would have to go to the executive committee in order to get a recommendation from the Conservation Authority to go ahead with the variance. It requires executive committee's approval first. And that, if that doesn't happen right away, then it's going to delay things in order for the applicant to come back to us with the approval of the Conservation Authority.
Two separate processes. That's what we heard. So there's nothing to delay. So Mr. LaBelle can apply for that added minor variance. There's not going to be any difference to the process that's completely separate through the RVCA. So I
think there is a difference though, right, Madam Chair?
So Mr. Hope, Mr. LaBelle, sorry.
No problem.
So let me go to Member White, because I think he might want to jump in. So I'd like to give him a chance to chat first. Go ahead, Member White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question about the whether or not the approach has been made to the Conservation Authority to address this encroachment into the floodplain. Has that approach been made already?
Mr. LaBelle?
The chair, it's
yes.
not an encroachment into the floodplain. It's an encroachment into the setback from water course, which is before, and that matter has been brought up previously, and staff had indicated that it wasn't supported, hence why the application proceeded, the development proceeded in absence of that cantilevered deck being included in the original application on file, which is separate from this variance and has been dealt with and approved. But so as Mr. LaBelle had indicated, there has been ongoing conversations with the applicant and ourselves on the approach and how to work through the approval process for it.
All right, so I'd like to bring us back to then the deferral on this. I have a question for Mr. Belmar. So what dates would we be looking at if for recirculation? Mr. LaBelle, I'm assuming that you have all of the paperwork ready to, in fact, add that minor variance. If you needed to, you could have everything to staff by this Friday.
To have the updated variance, yeah, I mean, we could present it, sure. Yes.
So you would need to have all of the committee staff's requirements to allow for that circulation. So Mr. Belmar, if we could see you for a minute, what dates would we be looking at?
Madam Chair, as you know, panel 2 will be reconstituted in June, and hearings will move from evenings to daytime on a different day. I would recommend no specific date, but to adjourn this sine die. Committee staff always take that as a direction to put that on the next available scheduled hearing for that panel.
All right,
We're trying to. I would estimate that we'd be looking at Tuesday, June 20th, but I
Okay.
prefer not to have a specific date associated with a sine die adjournment whenever there's a recirculation.
I understand. We're trying to help this move forward. And I think we've heard from Mr. LaBelle that he would be prepared to have all the material ready to allow for the circulation in order to meet that date. Okay. Sorry, what was the date again? Sorry, Mr. Belmar, was June, not the 6th, it's the 14 days, so the 20th, correct? June 20th? Yeah, sorry.
Tuesday, June 20th is when panel 2 will be holding hearings a month from now.
Okay, sorry, I should have wrote that down. All right, so I'd like just to hear from Member Hindle and Member Markovich just for a minute. Which way would you like to go on this? I think we've heard from Member Willis. We know that I think Member Willis, I don't not to put words in your mouth, but I think you'd want us to deal with this tonight. Okay, Member Hindle.
Sure. I think typically my preference is to hear things together and in unison, and especially given that it's going to a new panel, I would lean in that direction. But I'm okay to move forward this evening with the application that's before us, given that it does sound like they are separate issues and independent of one another.
Okay, Member Markovich.
Yeah, I'm more inclined to hear them, have them heard as a package deal. So looking at the further date.
All right, thank you. And Member White, just a good confirmation from you. You're looking at June 20th.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm inclined to delay this consideration. These provisions were put in specifically to address the interests of the Conservation Authority. And on that basis, I think I'm hearing that the Conservation Authority is not entirely happy with the proposal that's before us. So I'd be inclined to suggest that it be deferred until some resolution, hopefully some resolution of that RBCA concern is forthcoming before this is dealt with.
All right, thank you, Member White. So just for the record, I'm also leaning towards the deferral to June 20th, the reason being, the reasons the Member White actually quite well outlined. And I think Member Hindle, you really raised a very important point with the fact that we have a reconstituted group, panel 2, and to give them all of the best, chance to make most informed decision. In my mind, that June 20th date makes better sense. So on that basis, then, Mr. LaBelle, I think we've got 4 panel members are looking for that deferral. So we're going to go to the June 20th date. It'll allow you to get your materials in by this Friday, make sure that that circulation happens. With that, though, this is, I do need to go to the public. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak for or against the adjournment to June 20th? Mr. Lalonde, did you want to speak to that?
If I may, through the chair, just for the benefit of the committee and maybe just for information from, I don't want to say competing processes, but 2 different processes. I think for the applicant's perspective, I guess going through our process, whether one happens before the other, having a decision on one may or may not be helpful for their cause. So if If this is adjourned and they are going to seek, I'm not sure the applicant's perspective, but typically when we do have these situations, they're generally applied for after a variance is brought forward, so they have some certainty around the planning process. So just wanted to know that while concurrent applications are available and are permitted, there's nothing stopping them. It's generally recommended that you do one before the other.
So Mr. Lalonde, that will be Mr. LaBelle's call.
Yeah,
So either Mr. LaBelle will wait out for the June 20th date, or you can bring it forward. I think what we heard was very clearly that they're two separate processes based on two different sets of criteria for decision making. So on that basis, we'll leave it to Mr. LaBelle. This committee has decided that we're going to the June 20th. And so with that, I'll make one last call to the public because I don't think I saw anybody come forward. Gone. All right. So for the record, this application is deferred to June 20th. And good luck, Mr. LaBelle. I hope that this doesn't in any way really somehow taint, not that I want to use that word, but your application process. I'm going to wish you luck with that. Ms. Willis.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify something. I think you said that the vote was 4-1 in favor of the adjournment, but I think it's 3-1.
It might, or 3-2. And Mr.
3-2.
Mr. Handel going with
and I'd just like to register my dissent on the decision to adjourn it.
Okay, thank you. We will do that, Mr. Handel. We will also register your dissent. All right, we will do that. Okay. All right, so we're on to the second adjournment for tonight, which is application number 7 for 136 and 138 Acacia. We're looking for Simran Soor, please. Good evening.
Madam Chair, I will be speaking to the adjournment request this evening.
All right, then I'm giving you the floor, Mr. Chan. You can give us just the reasons for the adjournment.
So just to be clear, the request this evening is to adjourn the application sine die. As the members of the committee will know, this application has been on your agenda 2 or 3 times now. We now have the request for adjournment is for a number of reasons. We now have a different recommendation from staff than what we had initially. We now have a recommendation from staff for refusal. We received notice that was going to be their direction late on Friday and received the revised report on Monday. I've been out of town and have not been able to discuss the staff position with my client or with my solicitor, or his solicitor, I should say, not my solicitor. So I'd like to have time to do that. I'm also advised that despite the strong position in the staff comments to the committee, I understand that our client's solicitor has reached out one more time to the city solicitor to discuss whether or not we're dealing with merged lots or separate lots. And so we'd like the adjournment so that we can explore a number of options with our client. One would be to come back at a later date with the application as filed. Another possibility, quite frankly, is that we withdraw the application and we don't waste anybody's time or energy dealing with the discussion. And there may be other options that we would like to explore with our client. We'd just like time to do that. I don't want to adjourn it to a specific date. We've done that the last previous adjournments, and we're still trying to get our head around the issue. So simply put, Madam Chair, members of the committee, we'd very much appreciate it if you adjourn the application sine die, and we will get back to you at some time in the future to let you know which path we intend to follow.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chan. Any questions from the panel members on this? And I have to agree with you, Mr. Chan. I think we've seen so many adjournments on this application that at some point it just makes sense that we re-baseline the ground on this and go back to sine die, and so thank you for that. I appreciate your recognizing that and looking for new options with your clients. So, all right. With that, then I just need to go to the public portion. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against the adjournment sine die? Yes, Ms. Black, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The instructions that I have received on behalf of the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association are to ask that the application proceed today and that submissions be heard.
Okay. Very different than where we just were 2 seconds ago.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Were you aware of that, Mr. Chan, that the Community Association was looking to hear this tonight?
I wasn't aware. I'm not surprised. I think that they see the staff recommendation. They too are opposed to the application. I think they see an opportunity to wrap this up once and for all. But I think that as the applicant, we should be given the opportunity to pursue options and get back to the committee and the community association and city staff on the path forward, one of which may be to abandon the applications.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing, of course, that you have that as your prerogative to withdraw the application completely, which means that there is no sine die, and it'd be, so in my mind, Ms. Black, unfortunately, we really do go with the applicants just on this. It doesn't make any sense to hear an application that the applicant doesn't want anymore. So we really don't want to waste everybody's time to do that.
Madam Chair, I appreciate that.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. McCartney?
Yes, thank you. I think, I'd like to hear what the opinion of the committee is tonight, given the recent recommendation as well, just to support Ms. Black's request. I mean, I think the applicant has had sufficient time to present his case on behalf of the client. Given the recommendation, I'd love to hear the thoughts of the committee on this before.
The committee is the only thing we're
again.
talking about right now, Mr. McCartney, is an adjournment, sine die. We are not talking about the merits of the application whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else? All right. So committee members, then we're going to go to a vote. All those in favor of adjournment sine die on this application? All right. So for the record, the application is adjourned unanimously sine die. Mr. Chan, I'm going to wish you luck. I'm going to wish you luck, and I'm also going to suggest that you keep in touch with the Community Association on any new proposals that you have. Better dialogue up front may, I don't know, make it easier going through the next time. So good luck to everyone, and thank you so much for your participation. You guys have been there every time, so thanks so much for staying engaged and for your time, frankly. So good luck, and we will not be the next panel hearing this. So you'll have a new set of eyes and a new set of people on this hearing on this property. So thank you. We're going to move on to the items that we're going to hear at this point. So let's start with application number 1, which is for 1241 Kilborn, looking for Holly Crawford, I believe is the name I have as the agent for the applicant. Hello.
Good evening.
So I'm going to need to read to you before we get into hearing your application. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm.
All right, great. Okay, so I'm not going to ask for presentation, Ms. Crawford. Seems like a pretty straightforward application, but I'm going to give the panel members an opportunity to ask questions. Okay, Not seeing any questions come forward on this, but like I said, we do have an opportunity to look at these applications enough in advance and to look at the plans and to talk about what's being proposed and look at the staff report. So since there's no clarifying questions at this time, I'm going to open it up to the public. I don't have anybody on my speakers list for this item. So is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak either for or against this application? The minor variances that we're looking at to allow for an enclosure to a ramp on a property. Not seeing anybody come forward. All right, there's no conditions obviously attached to this. All right, I think we can go to a vote. So members of the panel, all those in favor of the minor variances. All right, for the record, the minor variances are granted. So thank you, Ms. Crawford. I don't think we need anything else. It's good and short. So good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to application. I'm going to do some of the easy stuff before we go to some of the harder stuff. So let's go to application number 4, which is for 17 Steeple Chase. Looking for, got the agent's name down as Robert Stocky.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. So before we get going, I'm going to need to read to you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do I either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear that to be true.
All right. So we're not looking for a presentation from you, Mr. Stocky. I am going to open it up to the members of the panel for any questions at this particular point in time. We're talking about a minor variance. Nobody seems to be raising for a sunroom at the rear of a property. Pretty straightforward. Okay. All right. Well, then there's no questions. I'm going to go to the public portion at this point. We don't have anybody on our speakers list. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application for a minor variance to allow for a sunroom, the back of a property, reduced rear yard? Okay, don't see anybody coming forward. So panel members, I think we can go to a decision. All those in favor? All right, for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Thank you, Mr. Stocky.
Thank you. By the way, it's sad to see you all go. We've appeared before you before, and you've done a wonderful job. So thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Stocky. It's very nice to hear that. We appreciate it. All right, on to application number 5, and that's for 621 Kochar Avenue. I believe I'm looking for Mr. Campanelli on this. Mr. Campanelli. Hello. Oops, can't hear you. Mr. Campanelli, can you say something for us so that I know whether we can hear you? Nope, can't hear you. Sorry. Still can't hear you. Mr. Campanelli, how are you doing? All right, if we can't get sound from you, Mr. Campanelli, then we're going to have to step you down and bring you back. Okay, let's try again. Not hearing you. Nope. Not hearing you. All right, so Mr. Campanelli, I'm going to call you back a little later. All right, we're going to go to another application at this point. So let's go to number. A minute. All right, let's go to number 8 for 3535 Borrisokane Road. Mr. Bond is who I'm looking for. Mr. Bond, where's Mr. Bond?
I am here. Good evening, Madam
Hello.
Chair, members of
Hello.
the committee.
Yes. Well, Mr. Bond, I'm going to read you.
Yep,
I need to
go ahead.
read you. We got to start with that. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I do so affirm that to be true.
All right, so Mr. Bond, not looking for a presentation from you on
Okay.
on this particular application. So I'm going to open it up to the panel members for any questions that they may have. We're a quiet bunch tonight, it would seem. Much quieter than normal, I would say. All right, we're talking about the drive-through for car wash on a currently vacant parcel of land. And it's not just any car wash. This is a fairly large car wash. I don't think I've seen one like this before. This is like a new one on me. Are there many of these, Mr. Bond?
There's one. Well, there are some actually. Jordan Lupovici, who's the development manager for the client, our client Halo, is actually appearing tonight. There is an existing facility out on Innis Road, which has been operational for a few years. There's one which proceeded through a site plan application process out on Hazeldean Road, which is opening, I think, this summer. And Halo has a number of existing facilities around the province, I believe in Southwest Ontario.
Okay, very interesting. All right, well, members of the panel, if there's no questions, I can go to the public portion on this at this point. And I will. Then let's see, in speakers list, I do not have any members of the public. So I'm going to open it up. Anyone in the audience want to speak either for or against this application for minor variance that deals with a maximum gross floor area for car wash? All right, I am not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, then I guess we'll go to a vote. Panel members, all those in favor? All right, for the record, the application is unanimously granted. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to congratulate and thank the outgoing committee members for their service on panel 2, and all the best to each and every one of you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bond. We do truly appreciate that feedback. So terrific.
Well, I know it's not an easy. It's not an
again.
easy job. It's not an easy job, and I know it's a lot of effort goes into it. So I appreciate it.
Oh, well, I've got to tell you, the panel members, I think we have wonderful expertise on this panel, and it's been really, we've had a lot of really enriching discussions about planning from different perspectives. So it's been terrific. So thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. All right, so we're going to go to application number 9, which is for 578 Wavell Avenue. Mr. Poulin is who I'm looking for this time.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Poulin. So let me read to you before we go too far. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
Yes, I swear.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay. So this was so I know Pratt had originally requested an adjournment on this. They've withdrawn their request for adjournment, I believe, because you've submitted the TIR, an updated TIR. Is that correct?
Yes, the TIR was updated. There's a attached deck that projects into the rear yard. It was updated to reflect that.
Okay, all right. No presentation required, but there are questions already. So Mr. White, I'm going to let you ask your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question of staff. I'm wondering if there are any, I assume there aren't, but if there are any issues with respect to the building code and the building separation requirements under the building code here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I directed the applicant to contact Building Code Services directly to resolve that. And so as far as I know, the answer is no. If there are any issues, that'll get addressed at the permit stage, but it's not something that we can contemplate or something that I would look at through my review other than just a general inquiry.
All right, thank you, Ms. Clazaro. Can either Mr. Poulin or Mr. Chown confirm that you've maybe been in touch with Building Code Services?
We did reach out to Building Code Services and they responded to us referring us back to CAS, actually, and city planning staff. So it was kind of a circle there in terms of comments on building code for separation distances. I would say that Building Code Services are circulated on these applications. This would be the second time they were circulated and they have not provided comments on this application.
It's just nice sometimes to get confirmation, like, are you sure? Somewhere in there, but okay, well, fair enough. And that's sort of where we've got to in our discussion too. And our pre-meet was where were their comments if they were circulated, but Member White, want to follow on?
Just a follow up, Madam Chair. If there is an issue, how would that be dealt with? There's probably no one here that can answer that question, but if they do eventually come back with some kind of issue with respect to the building code, where do we go from there?
Now, Mr. Chown, you have the answer for that?
Well, Madam Chair, I think the answer is fairly simple, that if there's a building code issue, our client won't get a building permit, and that'll be the end of the conversation. But, you know, I would agree with what Mr. Poulin has already said. If Building Code Services had an issue, we would all know by now. They've had 2 cracks at this.
All right, thank you. Member White, anything else?
No, fair enough. Thank you.
All right, any other questions by the panels? No? All right. And in this, just to confirm, we are regularizing an interior side yard, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that that's what we understood to be the case. All right. In terms of the public portion of this, let me see. I do not have a member of the public on my speakers list. I'm going to open it up to anyone in the audience. If you'd like to speak either for or against this application, at this point, now is your chance. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward at all on this. So panel members, I think we can make a decision. So all those in favor? All right, for the record, the application is unanimously granted. So thank you, Mr. Poulin. Thank you, Mr. Chown.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I look forward to seeing you on panel 1 in the next term of the committees, and to your colleagues on the committee, thank you for all your perseverance and diligence over the last 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chown. I'm hoping they all apply again someday and come back on the committee because I think they're all excellent members. So, okay, let's go to application number 10 and 11, consent and minor variance for 303 and 305 Poulin. Looking for Mr. Ho on this. Where have we got Mr. Ho on this? Oh, Ms. Ho, and you are the owner.
I am, yes.
Ah, okay. So I'm going to need to read to before we hear your application. So, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice that was provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that the sign was up for all of the days prior to the hearing, and that the sign was at all times visible and legible? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm.
All right. Thank you. I'm not looking for a presentation from you. It's fairly straightforward on in terms of the consent for the semi. I understand it was merged title. We're looking at re-separating it out, and then we've got a minor variance to recognize some of the relief required from the zoning bylaw. Are there any questions from the panel at this point on either the consent application or the minor variance? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Just if we have anybody on our speakers list. No, I don't have anyone on my speakers list. I'm going to open it up to anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against either the consent application or the minor variance on this. Okay, I don't see anybody coming forward. Just want to make a quick comment. Hydro Ottawa is requesting a hydro common element agreement. So you're aware of that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, there's two conditions of
Yes.
approval attached to the consent. You're aware of those?
Yes.
All right. Okay, well, I'm going to make the call on the vote for the consent. Panel members, all those in favor? All right, for the record, the consent application is unanimously granted. On a minor variance, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the minor variance application is also unanimously granted, subject to the conditions. Any questions, Ms. Oh?
No, I do not have any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you. Have a great evening. Bye now.
You as
Okay, I am going to see about Mr. Campanelli. What are we doing with Mr. Campanelli? Maybe we can have we got, and that's back to 621 Kochar Avenue.
Hello.
Ah, Mr. Campanelli, great to hear
I
your voice.
sincerely apologize for that. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know what happened. I have a pair of headphones now, so hopefully
No
we're
worries.
functioning.
Yeah, but now you lost your video. Oh, thanks.
There we go.
Your video's back.
I
All
pressed every button trying to get it to work, as you can see. So
Well, you did it. That's good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read to you, though, before we hear your application. Do
ready.
you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm that.
Okay. Not looking for presentation from you. Questions from the committee? So, Mr. Campanelli, I just want to make sure I really do understand this application. You're taking 3 lots and you're creating 2. So you're
Correct.
reducing. You're reducing.
Reducing.
And sorry, so what are we doing with the 2 properties then? We're gonna
They're constructing single family homes on.
okay. I'm looking at the pictures here. These are really nice houses. Looks like yeah, nice proposed development, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, there's no doesn't seem to be any questions from the panel members. Let me just have a look at nobody on. Oh, sorry, Member White, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question of staff. I'm just wondering how I mean, I don't have a problem with the application on its own, but how does an application like this support the residential intensification objectives of the official plan? And I think that the province now has emphasized intensification as an objective. I'm just wondering what, if any, concerns the planning might have with respect to that aspect of applications such as this. Admittedly, we don't see them very often.
Mr. Gruft.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the question. It is a good question in terms of the official plan and when we're trying to encourage density, where when we were reviewing, staff did look into the Carlton Heights secondary plan, which kind of formed our recommendation, which talks about the low rise density or designation within that secondary plan and discourages any new driveways as a means to discouraging any or creating any greater hardship on the existing stormwater management in the area. It also doesn't fall within the evolving neighborhood overlay as it's not on a minor or Main Street corridor. And so that kind of helps staff rationalize as to being comfortable with recommending in favor of the application.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, I'm a little baffled. I really am too, because the whole notion like this. So some of the things that you raised, Mr. Grift, is stormwater management is not an issue in this neighborhood. So you could create a lot of lots in this area and wouldn't be a stormwater management issue. Don't know that it's a driveway issue. So the reality is, I don't know, like there's no offense in this, but at the same time, it's certainly not, towing the intensification policy front, I guess, in that sense. So again, no, it's not offensive in any way, and not an issue with it. But I think Member White raised some really interesting questions about that, and it's sort of its desirability. But that said, any other questions? No. All right. I don't believe there's anybody on my speakers list for this, so I'm going to open it up. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against the application for the lot line adjustment, essentially? Not seeing anybody come forward. So, Mr. Campanella, you've had a chance to look at the conditions of approval?
Yes.
Any issues?
No.
All right. Okay, so nobody's come forward. Let's go to a vote. Members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted, subject to the conditions. Thank you, Mr. Campanelli.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Bye now.
Bye.
All right, we're going to do number 12, which is for 7 Tristan Court, looking for Mr. Yannick Morin. Mr. Morin.
Yes, hello.
Hello. All right, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
There you go.
Ah, now we can see you. All right, I'm going to need to read to you, if that's all right, regarding
Yes.
the signed declaration. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm.
All right, thank you very much. So just give me one moment. Oh yeah, okay. No presentation required. I'm just going to open it up directly to questions from the committee. So we're looking again at a lot line adjustment. It's supported by staff. It actually moves I think creates a more usable lot, moving it towards greater conformity with the zoning provisions. So any questions? No questions. All right. Well, in that case, there's one condition. Mr. Morin, you've seen it, the lot line adjustment condition.
Yeah.
All right. Nothing else that I can see. In terms of our speakers list, I have nobody on doc. So I'm going to open it up. Anybody in the audience, if you'd like to speak either for or against this application for a lot line adjustment, essentially at 7 and 17 Tristan Court. Now's your chance. I'll come back to you, Member White, in a minute. I just want to close up the public hearing portion. All right, so with that, then no one has come forward. So Member White, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a matter of clarification. My understanding, there are existing buildings on these lots. Is that correct? And if so, I'm assuming that they would have been subject to site plan control some time ago through the with the original development. Is there any effect, and maybe this is to staff, is there any effect on the if there have been developments, what is the effect on existing site plan agreements that are registered on title? What has to be done with those, with this lot line adjustment?
Mr. Gassier?
Yep. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. To respond to Member Wright's question, we did review the site plan application that was for 7 Tristan Court. This particular area there was no changes, there were nothing changed at the time. A easement was established. You can see it, I believe it was, I can't remember off the top of my head what part it was. It was already established, and that the severance lot line adjustment does not change it. So there is essentially, I would say, negligible impact because this area was not subject to any development with the previous site plan application. And there will be no impact to the stormwater outlet as well.
Member White?
That's fine. I am aware that there was development that took place in this area that was subject to site plan control under the form of municipality. And I think the answer I got is that there's no conflicts there that create a problem. So I'm happy. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Any other questions from the panel members? Okay. And I think I went out to the public already on this. So, I believe I did, right? And I came back to you, Member White, I think. Yeah, all right. And I did ask you, Mr. Morin, if you were aware of the lot line adjustment condition. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I think we're ready to go to a vote then, is where we are now. So, members, all those in favor of the consent for lot line adjustment. For the record, the application is unanimously granted. So thank you.
Thank you, guys, for time. You too. Bye.
Bye now. Last but not least, we're hearing applications number 2 and 3 for consent and minor variance for 1544 Kilborn Avenue. I'm looking for Mr. Bruni. Mr. Bruni?
Okay, here I am.
Yeah, sometimes it's not that obvious. It takes a little while sometimes. So I need to read to you before we hear your application. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
Yes, I affirm.
Perfect. Okay, so there was a lot of discussion in the pre-meet about your application. So we're going to ask for presentation.
Okay. Now, do you want a full presentation, like on the whole thing, or specifically to the 2 variances that staff had concerns with?
Run through your full presentation. That's fine.
Sounds good. Okay, so this is the just an overview of the proposed single-family home in a vacant side yard of the existing 2-story single-family dwelling. I'll go to the next page. The application overview, it just deals with the minor variances and consent to sever to allow for this development. The OP designation is outer urban transect. Corridor minor is a minor corridor, which does in the OP call for greater density on this street. The property is zoned R10, not R10, although I think there was some confusion because I think the O looks like a 0. And obviously we require consent and minor variance. Go to the next slide. The location is on the south side of Kilborn. At this particular location, it's mostly single family dwellings, but the street does vary in terms of other aspects. The upper left image, you can see that's the existing lot with the existing home to the left, and there's a truck parked in one driveway. An odd situation with this lot. There's currently 2 driveways on the lot, but only one building. There is an old shed on the back, and I'll speak to that in the conditions afterwards, but it's a shed, but it's not really a shed. It's a steel kind of few steel posts with tarps over it, basically. And so that's all that really exists other than the gardens and the planting. And the images to the right just kind of give a sense of what the neighboring houses look like. Next slide. So this gives you a better indication of what Kilborn is actually like. So there's, it's not like an interior residential street. It is a minor corridor. It does change. It has some commercial uses on it, apartment buildings, townhouses, some institutional uses as well. So it does have a not like an interior residential feel to it, but there is still a lot of residential on the street. Next slide. The organizing influences of the development, partly was the first was to retain the existing home. I mean, I think you've seen in a lot of these situations, the way most of these go is you tear down the existing house and you could actually construct 2 larger homes or 1 large single family home, which is more typical in this neighborhood. The client's desire is to retain the existing house. It is an older home that needs work, but he's looking to renovate it and refurbish the existing home and work on it. The other sort of site influences is there on the west property line. There is a primary hydro wire, which is why on the west side lot we have a greater than required side yard setback on that side, and that's to accommodate the primary hydro wire. And then we have 2 existing approaches on this site, and what we're looking to do with the new residence is basically reuse the location of the existing second driveway that's on the lot that you would have seen in that image where that truck was parked. So that's essentially where the new driveway is. Some of the functional aspects, the existing home, like I said, it can be retained and renovated. The existing front porches on this house once had some great character to it, but although they're run down, they can be refurbished now. And just another functional aspect is that this east-facing entry actually allows for a living space at the front of the house rather than a foyer. And I'll touch on that once I get into that variance. The private approaches are separated, which will allow for mature trees to be planted on, or trees that could become mature trees to be planted to sort of continue that streetscape. If going back to that other image, the original image, this is one of the few properties that doesn't have a mature street tree on it. So we're not removing any mature trees, but we will be planting trees that we hopefully eventually will grow to continue that characteristic of the street, which is pretty much the dominant character of most of this area are the street trees. Both houses have their space for private amenity at the rear, and there's sufficient space. This is about, this is a 3-bedroom home with a study home office. So I mean, this is sufficient space for a new residence here, especially on a street that's calling for greater intensification. Next slide. The variances requested. So on part 1, we're looking at a reduction of the lot width and lot area, and to permit the garage door to be more than 0.6 meters closer to the front lot line than is the principal entrance to the dwelling. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but that's the wording of it, and I'll get into that a bit more. Part 2, again, lot width and lot area variances, and variance F is to reduce a side yard setback, which is an existing condition on the existing home. It's just to legalize an existing condition. And the front yard parking, variance G, again, it's an existing condition, and I'll touch on that more on what that is and why we're pursuing that. Next slide. And just to touch on some of the urban design elements of it, we by reusing the driveway locations and keeping the existing, I mean, we're basically maintaining the same amount of soft landscaping in the front, where it allows for tree planting to continue the street trees, and generally the development allows for two smaller homes that are both of similar size to the character of generally the homes in the neighborhood, as opposed to, like I said, if we were, which a lot of properties have done, or some properties have done in this neighborhood, where they tear down the home and, you know, construct a much larger home that is much larger than the rest of the street. And in this case, we do have a more compact form, which does suit the character of the street, and I think is really appropriate for Kilborn itself. Like I said, it's kind of distinct from the rest of the neighborhood. From a sustainability point of view, not that really matters to the committee, but you know, the whole objective of this is to retain that existing home. So we aren't removing a home, putting it in a landfill. It's we are retaining the existing home. Next slide, please. And just for consultation sakes, I'm sure you read this in the planning rationale, but we met with staff on a couple occasions, and we did understand the two concerns that they had. They didn't seem like serious concerns, but they did note that they would have to say that they were concerns. The owner met with the abutting neighbors, and as far as I understand, there were no major concerns with the development. I think one neighbor had discussed concern with water potentially draining on their property, but as we know, that's will be taken care of through site servicing and grading plan submission, and we aren't permitted to drain our stormwater onto anyone else's property. I saw that there was an email from a neighbor expressing concern with the front yard parking. I think reading the variance, it sounds worse than it actually is. I think once I explain it, I think we'll understand that you know, I think it's desirable for this property to maintain that front yard parking space. And then we did have a meeting, myself and the owner, with the president of the community association. After the meeting, she did not feel there was a need to do a community presentation, and that she told us at the end of it she didn't have any concerns with the application for any of the variances. Although I didn't see a letter on file, I did touch base with staff today just to see if there was any further comments or anything. And as of like whatever 10 o'clock this morning, there weren't any further comments. So I don't believe they submitted anything in writing. Next slide, please. So this is you know, dealing with variances A, B, D, and E, which is lot width and lot area. So our property, we will require reduced lot width and lot area. And what this demonstrates is that firstly, there are other lots in the area that do not, and if we were to go even further out, there are other ones that have been severed in that, but these ones are the closest that demonstrate there are lots that don't meet the current zoning bylaw. So we wouldn't be the first. And again, I think going back to the official plan, that Kilborn is a minor corridor. And it does call for greater density, and the only way to achieve greater density is to kind of break away a bit from the lot fabric, and smaller lots is usually the way to do that. And planning staff had noted no concern, and they agree with the position that, you know, that the official plan calls for this type of gentle density. So I don't believe there were any concerns or issues with this minor variance. Next slide. Now we'll get into the front door. Firstly, this map just demonstrates that, you know, I just want to, you know, point out that we aren't interrupting some like other streets in the neighborhood where there is a distinct rhythm of front doors and porches along the entire street. And this in this particular case, we are not disrupting that. Like there are already a lot of the houses, because we're sort of the end of the block, a lot of the houses on this street face the side road, and so their lot line that fronts onto Kilborn is the side of the house and not the front, and so not that that's a characteristic we're trying to achieve. It's just to note that we aren't breaking away from any distinct pattern on the street. And, there are other houses in the neighborhood, like, 1500 Kilborn, that are just designed without a front facing door. They actually, facing the side. That's something that we considered when taking this approach. And if we go to the next slide, the primary reason for this was one, in typical houses where we have a front facing garage, the front of the house, the living space is typically a foyer. What we try to achieve here is using that space as a livable space. So by moving the entry to the side, what it allows for is a home office, a study, a place that will actually be occupied most of the day. You achieve the eyes on the street, provides more animation with the street and more engagement with the street, as opposed to an empty foyer. And it allows for a critical use that in today's day and age with working from home, that it's something that wouldn't sit empty. It's likely an important feature of any home now. So it is something we try to achieve. And the dotted line of the door here is just to show you, if we put a door there instead of a window, this variance goes away. That's the only thing that changes. There's nothing else about this whole proposal that we would have to do other than show a door instead of glazing. And I think from the images, you can see that I think the dominant feature of this house is not the garage door, but I think it's that tall glass volume at the front. Like that, it is designed, like the planner says, it does sort of mimic an entrance. And that's kind of the idea, that the glazing at the front, the study and the master bedroom above are really the prominent feature of the home. The garage is recessed the way the bylaw requires it. And you can imagine, if you looked at that bottom image to the right, if that lower window happened to be a swinging door instead of a window, does it actually change anything on this application? Not really. What it does, if you look at the plan, is now it becomes circulation space and kind of wasted space in the house, which is kind of the nature of all these houses. What we're trying to do is, I think, something that's a better design. And like I said, it's actually better urban design from my point of view, having a living space on the street rather than a foyer that's only used on occasion. The other aspect of this is that we did design the front with some landscaping, a landscape feature, raised planter and gardens, and a wider sort of porch area. So again, if you look at the upper image, you can see how that space with the gardens and that sort of porch that takes you to the entry is of a similar quality, except in a more modern way, to the traditional porch on the existing home. So there's a lot of design considerations with this. I got the sense, speaking with Miss Kelly, that there wasn't a big concern with it, but I mean, it's just one of those things that the planning department just will always state it as a concern. And I didn't get the sense that this was, something she had a huge issue with. She did mention that, she did like the idea that we were glazing quite a bit of the front to sort of give it that prominence of an entry. That was the approach all along. And again, it was, it's really just a design thing, and simply putting that door there would make this go away. But we do feel like this is a better design, and that's it's something we would like to keep. And so we can come back to any questions on that. I'll just go to the next variance. Now for variance F, again, this is just the existing side yard situation of the house. It's just legalizing this condition. I don't believe there is any concern from anybody on this, and it makes sense to do this. Next slide. The last one is to do with the front yard parking. So This is an existing driveway. We're not changing that. We would be parking exactly where they would be parking now. And all we're asking for is to basically legalize that condition. We couldn't determine whether this is a condition that would have a legal conforming right or legal non-conforming right. It's something, you know, through images and stuff, we couldn't quite tell. Although we do know that the addition was done sometime, I believe, in the late 70s, early 80s. I'm assuming the porch was constructed at that time as well. So this is at least, it says at least been there for 30 to 40 years, this condition. And it's existing. What we're asking is to keep it. Again, the easy way to make this go away, and we were going to do this, but the more we thought about it, it just didn't make sense, was just remove the porch. If we remove the porch on the existing house, we have a legal, if you look at the bottom right image, we have a legally complying parking space. The idea here is to refurbish that porch and maintain the character of the existing home. It doesn't make sense to me to tear it down and you know, just remove the porch so you can park a car, when all likelihood they're likely going to park where they park right now anyways. It's not like anyone's going to, you know, always be pulling up to that wall of the house. So it seemed like a shame to tear it down. The idea would be to try and keep it and just legalize that parking space. And it's not the full parking space. It's a like 1.2 meters or something like that. 1.5 meters of the space is protruding. We're thinking about just doing a reduced parking space, but I think planning department said they wouldn't support that small a parking space. So we decided to just go with the front yard parking. But again, I think it makes, in this case, if someone's reading the application like a neighbor and without the full extent of understanding the rationale behind it, it does sound like, yeah, that we're asking to allow us to park in the front yard of the house where otherwise there's landscaping and gardens. We're not looking to do that. We're just looking to regularize what's already there. And we're basically looking for permission to keep that porch. That's really the thesis there on that one. And I think that's it. I mean, the next slide is really going through the 4 tests. I'm assuming everyone's read this. I don't know if you want me to touch on this at all and go through it again. But it's there. I can if you like.
No, that's fine, Mr. Bruni. Unless there's members that specifically want to hear it, but I do know that we do have that material. Okay. All right. So thank you for that very comprehensive presentation, and thank you for explaining some of the things, in fact, that we were a little bit just questioned why certain things were done from a design perspective. So I'm going to open it up now to the members of the panel. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Member Willis, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify something. In doing this severance and the redesign of the front, is the existing driveway that is the issue of the front yard parking, is that actually going to be reduced in width as part of this redevelopment of the site?
Yes, I believe it does need to be reduced in width a bit.
Okay, so that's what's reflected in the site plan, is it's down from the amount of driveway width will be less than what is currently there. Yeah. Okay, so I actually, and the other thing I was going to ask was, can't remember, it'll come back to me.
We'll come back to no worries there. Anyone else? Member White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question of staff. First of all, there is a secondary plan that's mentioned, I think, in the planning report, the Alta Vista Faircrest Heights Riverview secondary plan. Is that question one? Is that a statutory component of the official plan? In other words, yeah, is it a statutory component as opposed to a guideline document of the official plan?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. In response to the question, Member White, yes, the secondary plan has the same legislative weight as the official plan policies, so they are policies and not guidelines.
Okay, thank you. Keeping that in mind, a question concerning the policies with respect to low-rise development in this area, and that's in the secondary plan. Section 2 policy on low-rise development states that in determining the acceptability of low-rise neighborhood growth proposals, lot sizes in the immediate surrounding blocks of the proposed growth will be considered representative of the typical lot size of the surrounding area. My understanding that, and then I think it's mentioned in the planning report, that existing lot sizes range from 14.56 and 26 meters in lot width and 451 square meters and 717 square meters in lot area. I think in this case, the lots are an average of less than 11 meters in width and an average of less than 340 square meters in area. I'm concerned that that situation, the existing lot proposals, conflict with that policy with respect to low-rise development in section 2 of the secondary plan. Maybe you can respond to that, and then I have some other questions as well.
You're looking for a response from Ms. Kelly?
Yes, yes, sorry, yes.
Yes, Ms. Kelly, go ahead.
For sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So that is correct. The secondary plan does provide direction that in determining the appropriateness of low-rise growth proposals, that folks are to refer to the lot sizes in the immediate surrounding blocks. In terms of this application, staff did review existing lot pattern in the immediate area and noted that while the lot shape varied, you are correct, lot size was more consistent. That being said, it's important to note that Kilborn Avenue is designated in the secondary plan for low-rise neighborhood development. And the next section of the policy speaks to instances where lot sizes vary, that street trees are to be kept at the same interval, and it provides other policy direction, including utilizing existing driveways or not permitting existing new driveways to mitigate some of the impacts associated with new infill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? The committee? Okay. There's no other questions. Then I am going to go to the public portion on this. I don't believe we have any speakers for this one. So I'm going to make a call out there. If there's anyone in the audience who has an interest or wants to speak to the committee about either the consent application or the minor variance application, you can just raise your hand and the committee coordinators will bring you in. I don't know how many people are left. Maybe nobody at this point. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward whatsoever. So Mr. Bruni, you did a couple of things. First off, thank you for mentioning, yes, we do need for a housekeeping item on the notice. So it is in fact a change that we have to make from R10 to R10, which is an easy mistake to make. Oh my goodness. So secondly, so we've done that. Secondly, we've got a number of conditions. I think you alluded to wanting to raise one of the conditions.
Yeah, that's just regarding condition 6, which asks for a demo permit for the shed. I just want to clarify with Ms. Kelly whether a demo permit is actually required. It is, although on the survey I think it's noted as a shed. It's really a temporary structure. It's constructed of some metal tubing and tarps. They happen to ad hoc put a kind of wall door in front of it, but it is constructed of tarps and that, and you could just take it down with your hands if you really wanted to. I don't know if you would want some. I mean, the client can provide, or my client can provide some images of what it is. I don't believe from a building permit that this qualifies as something that requires a demo permit. There's no services to it as well. There's no electricity. There's no plumbing or anything like that. So I'm just wondering if the wording of that, like, I mean, it would be removed in order for the severance so that it's not the property lines are not going through it. But I don't believe a demo permit would be required for this structure.
So Ms. Kelly, I'm looking at the condition right now, and I'm thinking with just a few word changes, we could probably accomplish this. If you wanted to make sure that we still had in some form confirmation that that temporary structure had been taken down, then we could easily just call it that, to, you know, to have it confirmed, you know, in writing with, you know, maybe an image. I think that's a great idea, that the existing temporary structure has been removed, not demolished, so that we get away from the whole demolition permit language, and just leave it at that, in conformity with the zoning bylaw. Would that work, Ms. Kelly?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's one approach we could do. I will note, though, that the last section of the condition as it's worded currently says or relocated in conformity with the zoning bylaw. So we've had in instances on other applications where similar garages or sheds didn't necessitate a demo permit, and then the applicant simply removed or relocated that structure, and we were able to clear the condition in that case. I can confirm that for temporary structures such as tents, there's no requirement for a demo permit. The trigger for a demo permit for a structure is its size. I'm not sure of the exact size off the top of my head. I think it might be 15 or 30 square meters. But in my opinion, I think the way the condition's worded right now, I think there's some flexibility in terms of if a demo permit's not required, we'll be able to just clear the condition provided that the structure's removed.
Okay.
Well, so I'm looking at the wording thinking so to me, there's kind of like two scenarios. It has either been demolished in accordance with the demolition permit, or it's been relocated. And in this case, we're not going to do either. We're just removing it. So I would be tempted to say that you would change the last line to say that it has been removed or relocated in conformity with zoning bylaw, and just take out the whole reference to the demolition permit altogether. I don't know. Thoughts, Mr. Bruni?
I mean, there's always, you know, confusion in wording. I mean, if it's something staff can do and change the wording, I mean, it may save for some potential headaches later, but if they feel the wording is sufficient enough so that we don't need a demo permit, we just don't want to get caught later, you know, having to go through the process of having to convince anybody that we don't need a demo permit. Anyways, I think you know, I agree with the chair's comments, and you know, would appreciate if that was possible.
All right, so I think unless the members of the panel have an issue with this, I'm going to suggest that we remove the demolition language in it and just replace it with removal rather than demolition. In fact, you know, if you think about it, now that we know a little bit more about what the structure is, in fact, if a demolition permit or like none of that really applies to that kind of structure in the first place, so it would be misleading to keep it in a condition. So, all right. Any objection from members of the panel with some of that wording? No, we're good. Okay. Anything else on the conditions? That was it, Mr. Bruni?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So with that, then I think we can go to a vote. So let's go on the consent application. All those in favor? All right. For Member White, are you dissenting on this? Okay. All right. So then I think what I'm seeing is that 4 of the panel members are in support of the consent application. Member White, would you like to state your reasons for your dissent on it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm concerned that minor variances that are required here are not consistent with the policies of the official plan, particularly with respect to that section that I indicated in my question, which states section 2 of the policies of the secondary plan for the area in determining acceptability of low-rise neighborhood growth proposals, lot sizes in the immediate surrounding blocks of the proposed growth will be considered representative of the typical lot size of the surrounding area. I don't think we see that. In addition, the variances that are required with respect to lot width and lot area are substantial and I think inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaws that applies to the area. I think that sort of summarizes my position on these applications.
All right, thank you, Member White. So with that, then we're going to retain those reasons because we're going to move to the vote on the minor variance at this point. So all those in favor? All right, so that's the same outcome. We have 4 in support with Member White dissenting for the reasons that he has already outlined for us. So with that, Mr. Bruni, the applications are granted subject to the conditions that are listed. So with that, thank you very much for your time this evening and for your explanations. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, have a nice evening.
You
And
too.
with that, it takes us to the end of our agenda. I need a motion to adjourn. Member Willis, thank you. Seconded by Member Hindle.